The night shift at the International Deep Space Listening Post in Nevada was almost over. Dr. Alan Mercer yawned and stretched in his chair. His eyes were tired from staring at screens for 8 hours. The clock on the wall showed 5:47 a.m. 13 more minutes and he could go home, take a shower, and sleep. Alan took a sip from his cold coffee and grimaced. 20 years of listening to space, and what did they have to show for it? Static and silence. Sometimes he wondered why they even bothered. The computer in front of him beeped suddenly. Alan sat up straight, fully awake now. The sound was not part of the normal system noises. He checked the monitor and frowned. The deep space array was picking up a signal from Sector 42, far beyond Pluto. Probably just another pulsar, he muttered to himself, but his fingers were already typing commands to focus the receivers. The signal grew stronger. Alan's heart beat faster. This was not a natural phenomenon. The pattern repeated every 12 seconds. It was too regular, too precise. Alan picked up the phone and called his supervisor. "Catherine, it's Alan at the listening post. You need to come in now. We've got something." Catherine Winters arrived 20 minutes later, her gray hair still messy from sleep. She stood behind Alan and watched the pattern on the screen. "How long has it been broadcasting?" she asked. "Almost an hour now." "And Kate, it's changing. The computer says it's adjusting to match our communication protocols." Alan pointed to another screen where lines of code were appearing. "It's learning our language, from our own satellites and transmissions." Catherine's face was pale. "Have you told anyone else?" "No. Protocol says to inform you first in case of potential first contact." The computer beeped again. Words began to form on the screen, in English. Alan and Catherine leaned forward to read, "Help, U.S. We are dying. Vex hunt us to extinction. Found your signals. You have what we lack. Please respond." Alan's mouth felt dry. "Is this real?" he whispered. Catherine didn't answer. She was already on her secure phone, dialing Washington. Within 6 hours, the listening post was filled with military personnel, government officials, and scientists. The alien message had continued, providing more details. They called themselves the Lindurians, a peaceful species of explorers who had discovered Earth's transmissions 2 years earlier. They had spent those years studying human languages and culture. The Vex, they explained, were predators who systematically eliminated other intelligent species. The Lindurians had no weapons, no armies. Their technology was advanced in many ways, but they had never developed tools for warfare. In a secured conference room, Alan explained what they knew to the assembled experts. "The Lindurians are offering us technology in exchange for help. They say they can give us faster-than-light travel, clean energy, medical advances beyond our dreams." General Richard Bates, a square-jawed man with a chest full of medals, spoke. "And what exactly do they want from us?" Alan took a deep breath. "They want us to fight for them. They've been watching our transmissions. They know about our wars, our weapons. They think we can stop the Vex." The room erupted in argument. Some believed it was a trap. Others saw an opportunity. A few thought it was their moral duty to help. Dr. Samantha Ellis, a linguist who had been analyzing the alien communications, stood up. She was a tall woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind. "The message patterns show sincerity markers consistent across all known human languages," she said. "Either they're telling the truth, or they're better at manipulation than any human who has ever lived." Catherine Winters, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "The president has called an emergency UN session. This is too big for one country to decide alone." 2 days later, Alan found himself sitting in the gallery at the United Nations in New York. World leaders had gathered to debate humanity's response. The chamber was tense. On giant screens, the latest messages from the Lindurians played, showing images of their people. They looked somewhat like tall, slender humans with pale blue skin and large, gentle eyes. "They're 3 months away from extinction," the Secretary General said to the Assembly. "The Vex have destroyed 11 of their 14 colony worlds. The Lindurians have no concept of warfare. They've evolved without it." "Or so they claim," said the Russian representative. "This could be an elaborate trap. Lieutenant General Frank Donovan of the United States Space Force stood to speak. He was not a tall man, but his presence filled the room. "Whether it's a trap or not doesn't change our moral obligation," he said firmly. "If someone asks for help, and we have the ability to provide it, we should. That's what makes us human." The debate continued for hours. Alan watched as humanity struggled with its first contact decision. By evening, a vote was called. The result was narrow, but clear. Earth would respond to the call for help. Operation Distant Shield was born that night. 5 nations agreed to send their most advanced spacecraft, armed with the best weapons humanity had developed. The mission would be led by Commander Gregory Holt, a decorated officer known for his cool head in crisis. As Alan left the UN building, he looked up at the stars just becoming visible in the evening sky. Somewhere out there, a peaceful race waited for humanity's response. And somewhere else, the Vex continued their hunt, unaware that they would soon face something they had never encountered before: human warfare. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of activity. The world's greatest minds worked together, using initial technical data from the Lindurians to modify Earth's spacecraft for the journey. Alan worked closely with Dr. Ellis to maintain communication with the aliens. Commander Holt, personally, visited the listening post to speak with Alan. He was a man of medium height with intelligent eyes and a calm manner. "Dr. Mercer," he said, "you'll be coming with us as our primary communication expert." Alan blinked in surprise. "Me? I'm just an astrophysicist. I'm not military." Holt smiled slightly. "None of us were trained for first contact or interstellar warfare. But here we are. The Lindurians trust you. That's worth more than combat training right now." 1 month after the signal was first received, Alan stood on the launch platform at the newly named Humanity Defense Force Space Center. 5 ships were prepared for launch. The flagship, UNS Defiant, would carry the command crew and primary weapons. 2,000 volunteers from military forces around the world had been selected for the mission. As Alan walked up the ramp to board the ship, Catherine called to him, "Alan, good luck up there. Make us proud." He nodded, too nervous for words. Inside the ship, Commander Holt was reviewing final preparations with his team. Technical Officer Olivia Cruz was checking systems. Chief Medical Officer Daniel Wright was securing the last of his supplies. Military strategist Major Patricia Reyes was studying Vex movements based on Lindurian intelligence. Alan took his seat in the communications center. Through the small window, he could see the crowd gathered to witness the launch. Humanity's first steps into an interstellar war. "All stations report ready," Commander Holt's voice came through the speakers. "This is not just a mission for Earth. Today we answer a call that has crossed the stars. Today we prove that when one calls for help to Earth, humanity responds. And may whatever gods exist help the Vex when we arrive." The engines ignited, and humanity's first interstellar rescue mission began. The journey through space was unlike anything Alan had imagined. The UNS Defiant and its sister ships used the experimental drive technology based on Lindurian data. Stars blurred outside the viewports as they traveled faster than light. Something humans had only dreamed about in science fiction stories until now. Alan spent most of his time in the communication center, working with Dr. Ellis to maintain contact with the Lindurians. Each day they learned more about the aliens they were going to help. "They truly have no concept of warfare," Samantha told Commander Holt during a briefing on the 5th day. "Their society evolved without major predators on their homeworld. They never needed to fight for resources." "That's hard to believe," said Major Patricia Reyes, frowning at the data on her tablet. "Every human civilization developed weapons and warfare." "They're not human," Alan reminded her, "and now they're paying the price for their peaceful evolution." Life aboard the ship settled into a routine. The crew trained, studied Lindurian data, and prepared for what might await them. But as the days passed, tensions grew. One evening, Alan found Commander Holt alone in the observation deck, staring out at the strange stars. "Trouble sleeping, Dr. Mercer?" Holt asked without turning around. "Just thinking about what we're flying into," Alan admitted. "We're the first humans to leave our solar system, and we're heading straight into a war. Holt nodded slowly. 2,000 people. That's all humanity could spare for this mission. 2,000 against an enemy that has destroyed entire civilizations. The Lindurians say our weapons will be effective. The Vex have never encountered our type of technology. Let's hope they're right. Holt finally turned to face Alan. Because if they're wrong, none of us are going home. 3 weeks into the journey, Technical Officer Olivia Cruz called an emergency meeting. She was young for her position, but her genius with technology had earned her place on the mission. We've got a problem with the drive system, she explained, pointing to diagrams on the screen. The Lindurian technology is integrating with our systems in unexpected ways. At our current course and speed, we're going to burn out the main regulators before we reach Lindurian space. Can you fix it? Commander Holt asked, his face calm despite the serious news. Olivia ran a hand through her short black hair. Yes, but we need to drop out of FTL for at least 48 hours while I make the modifications. That will add almost a week to our journey, Major Reyes pointed out. Better late than dead, Chief Medical Officer Daniel Wright said dryly. The tall doctor had been quiet until now. And while we're stopped, I'd like to run full medical checks on the crew. This new form of travel is putting stress on their bodies that we don't fully understand. Commander Holt considered the information. Make it happen, Officer Cruz. And Dr. Wright, coordinate your medical checks with the department heads. Life on the ship changed during their 2-day stop for repairs. Without the constant hum of the FTL drive, the ship felt different. Some crew members became nervous in the vast emptiness of deep space. Others used the time to prepare more thoroughly for the coming conflict. Alan joined Major Reyes in the tactical center where she was running simulations based on what they knew about the Vex. They attack in swarms, she explained, showing him a holographic display of previous Vex attacks. No apparent concern for their own losses. The Lindurians think they might be a hive mind species. Like insects? Alan asked. Similar in some ways. Individual Vex may not be fully conscious on their own, but together, they form a dangerous intelligence. That's their strength, but it might also be their weakness. The ship's repair was completed on schedule, and they resumed their journey. As they got closer to Lindurian space, they began to pick up actual battle transmissions. The situation was even worse than they had feared. The Lindurians were down to their last 3 colony worlds, hiding in asteroid belts and planetary rings. 6 weeks after leaving Earth, Commander Holt called the entire crew to attention through the ship's communication system. We are now 1 day away from entering Lindurian space. His voice was steady and confident. Tomorrow, humanity will engage in its first interstellar combat operation. You all volunteered for this mission knowing you might never return to Earth. Whatever happens next, know that your courage honors our entire species. That night, few people slept well. Alan lay awake in his small cabin thinking about how quickly his life had changed. Just 2 months ago, he had been a tired scientist working the night shift. Now he was part of humanity's first contact team, rushing to save an alien species from extinction. The ship's alarm woke him early. He dressed quickly and hurried to the command center. On the main screen, he could see their destination, a small moon orbiting a gas giant. According to the Lindurians, this was one of their last sanctuaries. Multiple contacts detected, announced the sensor operator. Lindurian vessels near the moon, and larger ships approaching from the outer system, matching the profile of Vex attack vessels. We've arrived just in time for a battle, Major Reyes said grimly. Commander Holt stood from his chair. All personnel to battle stations. Weapon systems online. Deploy defensive screens. The human fleet formed a protective formation. The UNS Defiant took the lead position, with the other ships flanking it. Their orders were clear. Protect the Lindurians at all costs. Incoming transmission from the Lindurian vessels, Alan reported. They're thanking us for coming. Tell them thanks isn't necessary, Commander Holt replied. Just give us the tactical data we need. The Lindurian ships were small and sleek, clearly built for speed rather than combat. They transmitted detailed scans of the approaching Vex fleet, 12 large ships, each carrying hundreds of smaller attack craft. They're heading straight for the Lindurian settlement on the moon, Major Reyes said. Standard extermination pattern according to the data we have. Commander Holt's face hardened. Not today, he said quietly. Then louder. All ships, prepare to engage. Humanity's first interstellar battle begins now. The human fleet accelerated forward, placing themselves between the Vex ships and their intended victims. For a moment, the Vex vessels seemed to hesitate, as if confused by the new arrivals. They're scanning us, Officer Cruz reported, trying to figure out what we are. Let's help them understand, Commander Holt said. Target their lead vessel, show them that Earth has answered the call. The weapon systems of the UNS Defiant powered up. On the moon's surface, thousands of Lindurian refugees watched through their settlement's sensors as strange ships from a distant world prepared to fight for them. The first shots of humanity's interstellar war were about to be fired. The Vex ships moved forward like a wall of darkness. Their hulls were black and rough, covered with strange growths that looked almost organic. As they came closer, the human fleet got their first real look at the enemy that had destroyed so many civilizations. They're bigger than we expected, Officer Cruz said, her voice steady despite the tension. Main vessels are nearly twice our size. Commander Holt stood calmly at the center of the bridge. Size isn't everything in space combat. Weapon systems ready? All railguns charged. Nuclear torpedoes armed. Point defense lasers online, reported the weapons officer. Alan watched from his station, his heart beating fast. The Lindurian vessels had moved behind the human fleet seeking protection. Their transmissions showed a mixture of fear and hope. The Vex are launching smaller craft, Major Reyes announced. Hundreds of them. They look like some kind of boarding vessels. They're used to dealing with defenseless victims, Commander, Holt said. Let's show them something new. Target their launch bays and fire. The UNS Defiant shuddered as its main railguns fired. Massive metal projectiles accelerated to incredible speeds shot across space. They hit the lead Vex ship with devastating force, tearing through its outer hull like paper. The other human ships opened fire as well. Space lit up with explosions as human weapons struck Vex ships. For a moment, the Vex seemed confused by the attack. Their smaller vessels flew in chaotic patterns. They didn't expect us to hit that hard, Major Reyes said with satisfaction. Their tactics are changing, they're regrouping. The Vex response came quickly. Their ships turned their weapons toward the human fleet. Strange energy beams lanced out across space. Where they hit human ships, shields flared bright. Shields holding at 80%, Officer Cruz reported. Their weapons are powerful but not as effective as ours against shielded targets. Commander Holt nodded. All ships continue the attack. Focus fire on their weapon systems. The battle intensified. The human fleet moved in a tight formation, protecting each other as they fired continuously at the larger Vex ships. Two of the Vex vessels were heavily damaged now, drifting out of formation with fires visible through broken sections of their hulls. But the Vex adapted quickly. Their smaller craft began suicide runs against the human ships, exploding against their shields to weaken them. Shields down to 40%, Officer Cruz called out as the ship shook from another impact. They're learning our weaknesses. Rotate ships to present fresh shield sections, Commander Holt ordered. And launch our fighters. Let's see how they deal with our pilots. Squadrons of human fighter craft streamed out from the larger ships. Unlike the automated Vex vessels, these were piloted by humans. They flew in tight formations, targeting the smaller Vex craft with precision. Alan watched the battle unfold on the tactical display. Human pilots were outmaneuvering the Vex at every turn. Even though the Vex had more advanced technology in some ways, they had never encountered the unpredictable creativity of human combat pilots. A massive explosion lit up space as one of the human cruisers scored a direct hit on a Vex command center. The enemy ship broke apart, sending debris in all directions. First confirmed kill, announced Major Reyes to cheers from the bridge crew. But the victory was short-lived. 3 Vex ships coordinated their fire on the smallest human vessel, the UNS Intrepid. Its shields failed under the combined assault. Intrepid is taking heavy damage, Officer Cruz reported grimly. They've lost engine power. Alan felt sick as he watched the brave ship struggle. 400 people were aboard that vessel. Then something unexpected happened. The Lindurian ships, which had been hiding behind the human fleet, darted forward. They positioned themselves around the damaged Intrepid, using their advanced shields to protect it. "The Lindurians are helping," Alan said in surprise. "They may not know how to fight, but they know how to defend," Commander Holt observed. "All ships cover the Lindurians while they protect Intrepid." The battle shifted. Human and Lindurian ships worked together, creating a fighting retreat that allowed the damaged Intrepid to fall back toward the moon's orbit. After 3 hours of intense combat, the Vex broke off their attack. 7 of their 12 ships had been destroyed or disabled. The rest pulled back to regroup. The human fleet had survived its first engagement, but not without cost. Every ship had taken damage. 37 crew members were dead, with over 100 injured. Commander Holt called for a meeting with the Lindurian representatives as soon as the battle ended. The human ships moved into orbit around the moon, where they could make repairs, while protecting the Lindurian settlement. The Lindurian ambassador came aboard the Defiant. She was tall and slender, with blue skin that seemed to shimmer slightly in the ship's lighting. Her large eyes looked at the humans with wonder. "I am Thala," she said in carefully practiced English. "Our people owe you a debt we can never repay. You have done what we could not. You have fought the Vex and won." Commander Holt bowed slightly to her. "This was only the beginning, Ambassador Thala. The Vex will return with greater numbers." "But now they know fear," Major Reyes pointed out, maybe for the first time. Alan studied the alien visitor with fascination. The Lindurians were even more elegant in person than they had appeared in transmissions. Everything about them spoke of a peaceful, advanced civilization. "Your weapons," Thala said. "They are unlike anything we have seen. Simple in design, yet devastatingly effective." Officer Cruz smiled slightly. "Sometimes the simplest solutions work best. Your energy technology is far beyond ours, but you never developed projectile weapons or nuclear devices." "Violence is not in our nature," Thala explained. "We cannot even conceive of such things." "Well, it's a good thing you found us then," Dr. Wright said as he entered the room. "Because humans have been perfecting the art of violence for thousands of years." Commander Holt shot the doctor a warning look, but Thala was not offended. "Yes," she agreed. "That is precisely why we called to Earth. You are protectors by nature. We saw this in your transmissions, in your history. You fight for what you believe in." The meeting continued as humans and Lindurians shared information. The Vex would return within days, likely with a larger fleet. They needed a new strategy. Major Reyes studied the Lindurian data on Vex behavior. They operate like a hive mind, but there must be a central control somewhere. If we could find it and disrupt it. Their command ships carry what we call queens, Thala explained. They direct the lesser Vex. A plan began to form. The humans would help the Lindurians evacuate their moon base to a more secure location. Meanwhile, a strike team would prepare to attack the Vex command structure directly. As the meeting ended, Alan found himself standing next to Ambassador Thala. "Were you afraid to come here?" she asked him quietly. "To fight for strangers?" Alan thought about it. "Yes," he admitted. "We all were. But sometimes being afraid and doing something anyway is what courage means." Thala's large eyes blinked slowly. "We have much to learn from each other," she said. The next 3 days were busy for everyone. The human ships moved into defensive positions around the moon, while repair teams worked non-stop to fix the damage from the battle. The Lindurians helped by sharing their advanced materials and energy, technology. With their help, repairs that would have taken weeks on Earth were completed in days. Alan spent most of his time with Ambassador Thala and her advisors, learning more about the Lindurians and the Vex. Dr. Ellis joined them, eager to improve communication between the two species. The Vex were not always hunters, Thala explained as they walked through the Lindurian settlement on the moon. They evolved on a harsh world with limited resources. At first, they only took what they needed from other worlds. "What changed?" "Them?" Alan asked. "Growth. Their numbers increased too quickly. They began to see all other species as competition for resources. Thala's voice was sad. Now they do not just take what they need. They eliminate all others. The Lindurian settlement was beautiful despite being a refugee camp. The buildings were graceful structures that seemed to grow from the moon's surface. About 20,000 Lindurians lived here, the survivors from 3 destroyed colony worlds. Commander Holt and Major Reyes were developing a plan to strike at the Vex. They called a meeting with the senior officers and Lindurian leaders. Our goal is to target the Vex Queens, Commander Holt explained, pointing to a holographic display of the Vex fleet. According to Lindurian intelligence, they're housed in this vessel here, the largest in their fleet. It's heavily defended, Major Reyes added. We can't approach it directly. Then how do we get to it? Asked Officer Cruz. A new voice spoke up. I have an idea. Everyone turned to look at Lieutenant Paul Jackson, a young pilot who had distinguished himself in the recent battle. The Vex don't expect direct boarding actions. They've never faced them before. Major Reyes nodded slowly. A small team could use a stealth approach while the main fleet creates a distraction. It would be a one-way trip, Commander Holt warned. Even if you succeed in destroying the Queens, escape would be nearly impossible. I volunteer, Lieutenant Jackson said without hesitation. As do I, said a Lindurian scientist named Mela. I know Vex biology. I can help identify the Queens. The planning continued for hours. Eventually, they settled on a daring strategy. The human fleet would launch an attack on the Vex force, drawing their attention. Meanwhile, a small team would use a modified Lindurian shuttle, chosen for its superior stealth technology, to board the Queen ship. Their mission, plant explosive devices near the Queen's chambers. As the meeting broke up, Alan was surprised when Commander Holt approached him. Dr. Mercer, I'm adding you to the boarding team, he said. Me? I'm not a soldier, Alan protested. No, but you understand the Lindurians better than anyone, and if something goes wrong, we may need someone who can communicate with both species. Alan wanted to refuse, but he knew Holt was right. He had become a bridge between humans and Lindurians. His presence could make the difference between success and failure. The day before the mission, Alan found himself unable to sleep. He walked to the observation deck of the Defiant and was surprised to find Lieutenant Jackson already there. Nervous about tomorrow? Alan asked. Jackson smiled slightly. Terrified, but in a good way. He was young, maybe 25, with short blonde hair and steady hands. My grandfather flew combat missions in the Middle East. He told me there's no feeling like knowing you're fighting for something bigger than yourself. I'm not sure I'd call what I'm feeling a good kind of terror, Alan admitted. You'll do fine, Doc, Jackson assured him. Just follow my lead and remember why we're here. The next morning, the mission began. The human fleet moved out from the moon's orbit in attack formation. The Vex responded immediately, their ships forming a defensive pattern. While the main battle began, Alan found himself aboard the modified Lindurian shuttle with Lieutenant Jackson Mela and 3 human soldiers. The small vessel slipped away from the moon using its stealth systems. The Vex sensors are focused on the main fleet, Mela reported. They do not see us. The shuttle approached the massive Vex command ship from behind. Up close, Alan could see. The parts of the hull seemed to pulse, almost as if the ship itself was alive. Target area identified, Jackson said, pointing to a small docking port. Mela, can we use that entrance? The Lindurian studied her sensors. Yes, but we must be quick. The port will detect any prolonged contact. Jackson guided the shuttle with incredible precision. The docking clamps engaged, and a soft thud told them they had made contact. Suits on, Jackson ordered. Everyone checked their environmental suits. The atmosphere inside Vex ships was toxic to both humans and Lindurians. They entered the Vex ship through the airlock. The interior was dark and humid, with walls that looked like they were made of a mix of metal and organic material. The air was thick with a strange mist. Stay close, Jackson whispered. Movement sensors active. They moved through narrow corridors, following Mela's directions toward the center of the ship. Twice they had to hide as Vex drones passed by. Insect-like, creatures the size of large dogs that seemed to perform maintenance tasks. "The Queen Chamber should be ahead," Mela said after they had been moving for 20 minutes. As they approached a large door, alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. "They've detected us," one of the soldiers said. "No," Mela corrected. "The battle outside has escalated. The Queens are coordinating the defense." Lieutenant Jackson made a quick decision. "This is good. They'll be distracted. Let's move." They forced the door open and entered a vast chamber. In the center were 3 large pool-like structures filled with a glowing fluid. In each pool floated a creature unlike anything Alan had seen before. They were much larger than the drone Vex, with multiple limbs and oversized heads. "The Queens," Mela whispered in awe. "They rarely leave these pools. They connect mentally to command the lesser Vex." Jackson nodded to his team. "Plant the charges around the pools. 5-minute timer." The soldiers moved quickly, attaching explosive devices at key points while Jackson and Mela kept watch. Alan helped as best he could, trying to stay calm despite the danger. Just as they finished, a door on the far side of the chamber opened. 5 Vex warriors entered, larger than the drones with weapon-like appendages. "They've seen us," Jackson shouted. "Fall back." The team retreated toward the entrance, firing their weapons as they went. One of the soldiers fell, hit by a strange energy blast from a Vex warrior. They made it back to the corridor and ran toward the shuttle. Behind them, more Vex were coming. The charges would detonate in less than 4 minutes. "We're not going to make it back to the shuttle in time," Jackson realized. "New plan. Dr. Mercer, you and Mela get back to the shuttle. The rest of us will hold them off." "But," Alan began to protest. "Someone has to tell our people what happened here." Jackson cut him off. "Now go." Alan and Mela ran while Jackson and the remaining soldiers formed a defensive position in the corridor. The sounds of battle echoed behind them as they reached the shuttle. With shaking hands, Alan helped Mela detach from the docking port. The shuttle pulled away just as a massive explosion rocked the Vex ship. Lieutenant Jackson and his team had succeeded. Alan and Mela watched from the shuttle as a series of explosions tore through the Vex command ship. The massive vessel shuddered, fires breaking out across its hull. But it wasn't destroyed, yet. "We need to inform the fleet," Mela said, her voice shaking. "The Queens may be dead, but the ship is still dangerous." Alan nodded and activated the communication system. "Defiant, this is Dr. Mercer. Mission successful. The charges detonated near the Queens. Lieutenant Jackson and the others." His voice caught for a moment. "They didn't make it out." Commander Holt's voice came back immediately. "Understood, Dr. Mercer. Well done. Return to the fleet immediately. The Vex ships are behaving strangely." As they flew back toward the human fleet, Alan and Mela could see the battle from a distance. The Vex vessels, which had been fighting in perfect coordination before, were now moving erratically. Some continued to attack while others drifted aimlessly or even fired on each other. "It's working," Mela said with wonder in her voice. "Without the Queens, the hive mind is breaking down." When they reached the Defiant, Alan and Mela were rushed to the bridge. Commander Holt greeted them with a quick nod. "Good work, both of you," he said. "The Vex fleet is in disarray. Our ships are pressing the advantage." On the main screen, Alan could see the human fleet moving in to attack the confused Vex ships. Without central coordination, the Vex could not mount an effective defense. One by one, their ships were destroyed or disabled. "What about the command ship?" Alan asked. "Still operational but damaged," Officer Cruz reported. "It's trying to retreat." Major Reyes stepped forward. "We can't let it escape. If there are backup Queens aboard, they might be able to re-establish control." Commander Holt considered this. "All ships, focus fire on the Vex command vessel. Don't let it get away." The human fleet redirected their attack. Railgun fire and nuclear torpedoes struck the already damaged command ship. Its shields failed, and massive sections of its hull were torn open. But the ship was enormous, and despite the damage, its engines were still functioning. It began to move away from the battle, accelerating toward open space. "It's going to escape," Major Reyes said with frustration. Then something unexpected happened. The Lindurian vessels, which had been providing support to the human fleet, suddenly accelerated forward. They formed a line in front of the retreating Vex ship. What are they doing? Commander Holt asked, surprised. Ambassador Thala, who had come to the bridge during the battle, spoke up. They're going to ram it. Their ships have powerful energy cores. They'll be killed, Alan protested. Thala's large eyes were sad, but determined. They have volunteered. They know what is at stake. The Lindurian ships smashed into the front of the Vex command vessel. Their energy cores detonated in a blinding flash. The combined explosions tore the front half of the command ship apart. What remained of the massive vessel drifted lifelessly in space. The bridge was silent for a long moment. Then Officer Cruz spoke up. The remaining Vex ships are retreating. They're breaking off in different directions without any coordination. Let them go, Commander Holt ordered. They're no threat to anyone now. The battle was over. The human fleet had suffered damage and they had lost good people, but they had achieved what seemed impossible. They had defeated the Vex, a species that had destroyed civilizations. In the days that followed, there was much to do. The human fleet helped the Lindurians secure their moon base and begin planning for the future. With the Vex threat eliminated, the Lindurians could start rebuilding their civilization. A memorial service was held for Lieutenant Jackson and the soldiers who had sacrificed themselves. Human and Lindurian alike gathered to honor their memory. Alan found it hard to speak when asked to describe what had happened on the Vex ship, but he made sure everyone knew of Jackson's courage. 2 weeks after the final battle, Commander Holt called a meeting with his senior staff and the Lindurian leaders. Our mission is complete, he said. The Vex have been defeated, at least in this sector of space. It's time to think about returning home. Will all of you leave? Thala asked, concern in her voice. Commander Holt smiled slightly. Not all. We've discussed it among ourselves, and many of our people wish to stay, to help you rebuild and to learn from your technology. Others need to return to Earth with news of what has happened here. Alan had already made his decision. He would return to Earth. Someone needed to tell the full story of what had happened, and as the mission's primary communication expert, he was the logical choice. The day before the return journey was to begin, Alan walked with Thala through the Lindurian settlement one last time. The structures were more permanent now, with new buildings under construction. Children played in open areas, no longer afraid of attack from the sky. Your people have given us back our future, Thala said. We will never forget this. It was Lieutenant Jackson and the others who made the real sacrifice, Alan replied. Yes, but you all came. You answered our call when you didn't have to. They stopped at a newly built memorial. On it were inscribed the names of all who had died in the mission, human and Lindurian alike. We've learned from each other, Alan said. Your people have given us technology that will change our world, and perhaps we've shown you something too. Yes, Thala agreed. You've shown us that sometimes fighting for what matters is necessary. It is a hard lesson, but an important one. The next day, 2 of the human ships prepared to return to Earth. The Defiant would stay behind with a volunteer crew to help the Lindurians and continue learning from them. Commander Holt would remain as well, to oversee the growing cooperation between the 2 species. As Alan boarded the ship that would take him home, he thought about how much had changed. He had left Earth as a scientist who had never been in combat. He was returning as someone who had helped save a civilization. The journey back to Earth would take many weeks. During that time, Alan worked with Dr. Ellis to prepare their report. They included all they had learned about the Lindurians, the Vex, and the technology they had encountered. As Earth finally came into view on the ship's screens, Alan felt a strange mixture of emotions. He was happy to be home, but part of him would always be out among the stars now. He knew this was just the beginning. Earth had taken its first steps into a larger universe, answering a call for help with courage and firepower. And somewhere, out there, Other species were already sending their own calls, having heard of what humans had done for the Lindurians. Humanity's reputation was spreading across the stars. When one calls for help to Earth, humanity responds with firepower,